Good morning. Welcome back to another chapter in this video vlog, this timeline of life. I think I'll call this one the hostel because I now find myself managing Hikers Hostel here in Velico Terranova, and it's sort of like a dream come true. Really, it's a little bit unbelievable, but yet it's very nice. As you can see, the view is brilliant. I'm just waiting on the sun to come up. It comes up just over that ridge there, so it's a very nice setting. It was Cicero that said like that all you need is a garden and a library, and you have everything you need. And I have that here. I have a garden and a library, and the best of company. So I have to say it's a great experience. The first two books I've read is this one from Nietzsche. This one from Nietzsche, a book on Nietzsche by Walter Kaufmann, and Mike Tyson's autobiography. I have to say there was more philosophy in Mike Tyson's autobiography than there was in the book on Nietzsche. This was full of. This was. At first, when I read it, I thought it was bullshit. I said to myself, it wasn't great because it's all fucking and fighting and fucking and fighting. I was fucking this and I was fighting this and I had uppercuts and. But I said to myself, but then when you look at it at an analytical level, I found it very interesting because, like, it's sort of like what Nietzsche said about in reference to the will to power. But a lot of people don't understand the will to power because they sort of take it literally and they think it means the will to power, the will to dominate everything. Like as I say, the will to power, but that is the will to dominate everything. But that would be an instinctual drive. But that's not the way Nietzsche was using it. When Nietzsche talks about the will to power, Nietzsche was saying that, for example, when I question the origin of greed and the seven deadly sins, I says, if you look up the seven deadly sins, it says they're not actually categorized as seven deadly sins in the Bible, but they're sins that God wouldn't like. They're things that God wouldn't like. And I said to myself, that's bollocks, because that if you take God as the prime mover, which is what Aristotle called it, God as the prime mover, in that you can't control your feelings and you can't control your thoughts, then these instinctual drives, these feelings, and you can label them whatever way you want, but they are as a result of the prime mover. They're given to you to get you to act in a certain way, to get you to move in a certain way, like a marionette or a remote controlled android, which is what most people are, an organic android. But these feelings are like such as greed, or they're given to you to compel you to act in a certain way or move in a certain way. But of course, you have a choice in this if you think about it enough. But Tyson, as he said himself, like as Tyson said himself, he was a savage animal. And they're his words, not mine. They're his words. He was a savage animal. Now, whereas we're all animals, we do have higher and lower animals. And the lower animals, well, they don't think much beyond fighting and fucking, like, to be honest. But that'd be one kind of a lower animal, of course, because Nietzsche also said in this book what I disagreed with Nietzsche on was that he said the ascetic man is the most powerful man, because he said the ascetic man is the man who's able to control his impulses. But he said sublimate them, but he didn't seem to be sublimating his impulses, because he didn't seem to be able to supplement his own, because he seemed very much to be. He liked to be idolised. He liked to be worshipped. He liked all his contemporaries to kiss his arse. And basically, if anybody was to come along, even though he found their company boring, as long as they were kissing his arse, he was on cloud nine. So he liked to be idolised. He had a desire for power, a desire to be known. And despite what Kaufmann says in this book, I feel that Nietzsche was rather jealous of Wagner, who was a German composer and who was a wealthy man, a very wealthy man, and had a large audience. And I think Nietzsche himself had resentment in this regard, to use his own word. And I say that the ascetic man, I can see no point in asceticism, in leaving a meagre and miserable existence, because it doesn't serve anybody any purpose. What purpose does it serve? That you only enter into a perpetual war with the mind, that you don't enjoy any drink, you don't enjoy any good life, you just lead a miserable and meagre existence. To what end? Is it just to live another life with the expectation of another life after this one? Because if that's one of the biggest problems with Christian values is this expectation of another life after this one, the label of heaven. But then I read another philosophy book from John Locke, and it gave me a whole different spin, entwining uh, religion and politics. But I'll talk about that again. But back to Tyson's book. So there he was, fucking and fighting, and I said, "This is the most powerful man. This is power. This is power," because physically he was just able to destroy everything in his path, and And anything he wanted, he didn't go begging. When he was a child, he didn't go begging. He went and took anything he wanted. He went and robbed houses, robbed people's gold chains, robbed the handbag straight out of their hand. He just took anything he wanted. And that's power. Because might makes right. And despite people's creating law and creating rules and creating everything to protect their own selfish interest. But as I say, might makes right. But when you have a collaboration of weak individuals, as I say, a man has right to anything he can take and hold by whatever means necessary, even he has to form alliances to do so. But if you went down, for example, if there was something went on here and I went down and I got the cops, that's an alliance. That's an alliance. That's using a social structure, but it's alliance, an alliance, a hierarchical system that's put in place by a collaboration of weak individuals. And that's might, because they're using the might of a collective to act against, say, me or somebody else that we feel might be breaking their laws or breaking their rules. But the thing about Tyson is, the thing that surprised me, I have a look at my time. The thing about Tyson, and the thing about Tyson is, this was a display of power, and he put on a vulgar display of power. But the thing is, and what I found most interesting in this book is that people paid for this vulgar display of power. They paid for this, to watch this savage animal, this savage animal decimate his opponents. And they paid, and this is what made him a world champion. That not only was his fights full, but massive pay-per-views to watch a savage animal, to use his own words, a savage animal. But then the ironic thing is that they didn't find his behaviour socially acceptable, because they seem to have trouble accepting that this, to use his own words, is a savage animal. He was a savage animal. But they wanted to tame him, and this is what Nietzsche very much talked about the taming of man. And the taming of man, as they still do today, is through this social engineering, where they're basically engineering out the strong. But yet at the same time, they seem to have an appreciation for the strong in the ring, because they wanted to love to watch the MMA. And this is instinctual drives, the thirst for blood by the mob. But yet, when the savage animal is released among them in the nightclubs and in the and in the streets, that they didn't. They sent him to AA, because then obviously, well, he took a lot of drugs, but basically, if you have trouble controlling the power, if you are a more powerful person, in other words, you're running a higher current of energy, and I'm sure we all know who these people are. They run a higher current of energy. Well, the weak can't relate to this. And I don't think, I wouldn't consider Nietzsche a strong man now, we would have considered him weak. But when you're running a high current of energy, then drugs, it's very hard to control this, and drugs is one way. But then I had to ask myself, how much of a role did the drugs play in taming the savage animal, in taming the man, because he took a copious amount of cocaine and weed, and there was even a number of periods in the book there where he was on a morphine drip. But then you have to say, as John Locke says, this is nature, one part of nature impacting on another part of nature. And this is what you have to ask yourself. Then you have to watch the change. And the change that happened then is because even though the hard drugs make the dissolve to default mode network and they open up new neural pathways, you have to ask yourself what material he was being subjected to. Now, he read Tolstoy and he read some Nietzsche, but as he said himself, when he was going to the fights, he used to say, I'm the Superman, because he read a bit of Nietzsche, but I don't think his intelligence was enough that he could understand Nietzsche properly. Because when he was going to the fights, he said, I was the Superman. I couldn't spell my name, but I was the Superman. Now, if he couldn't spell his name, I'm sure he was struggling with Nietzsche, but he read a bit of Tolstoy, and Nietzsche had a lot of revolutionary material. And as a result of this, I'm sure as a result of his influence, he gave away an awful lot of his wealth. But in that he couldn't control himself and he couldn't control his own emotions. He did a lot of crying and he did a lot of, because he said himself, he cried at the, and then he had a fierce attachment to Gus as well. I forget his name, Gus. To Gus, his old trainer. So when he died, he was left with a massive void. So you can see an awful lot of philosophy in this book. But one thing I noticed was he started going to the AA because people started telling him his behaviour wasn't socially acceptable. It's not socially acceptable. That's not socially acceptable. And they sent him to the AA where they conditioned him in a certain regard, conditioned him in monogamy and what they deemed to be socially acceptable behaviour and how to have guilt and shame about his past behaviour. Because imagine I did that, and that was prominent throughout the book. Regrets. But as I say, then he seemed to be reduced to as a caged animal, but caged by the perceptions of others. In that he said he doesn't come out of the house much now, and he interacts socially that much and everything else. And this is very, very like a lot of these savage animals who are tamed by society, that they end up miserable and like any other caged beast. Like if you go to the zoo, you'll see loads of powerful animals that are caged, and they're basically depressed. They're miserable. But that's okay as long as, I'm just checking my time, but that's okay as long as society doesn't feel threatened in any way by them. They just want to look at them, they just want to enjoy them. But if you let them loose, they shit their pants. Yeah. So that was Tyson. There's more and then the greed of humanity, how nature, if you can't control yourself and you can't control your money and you can't control what's yours to control, how quickly people will take it from you. The likes of Don King and Robin Givens and all these. And then if you look for a deeper level of meaning as well, there's several women brought rape charges against him. And this was for him to question his own behaviour and learn to control himself. But what happened with Mike Tyson was Mike Tyson didn't learn to control himself, he allowed others to control him. He allowed others to dictate the nature of change, to determine the nature of change. And this is very much what I say in a lot of these videos, is fuck society and fuck everybody else and determine your own nature of change, establish your own values and define your own morality. Like that's sort of like, like I've been sitting here, I'm here in about 10 days now, and I've been thinking to myself, what direction would I like this hostel to go in? And I said to myself, well, the first thing is I have good experience of the chaos and I have good experience of the order. And now I think the way to go is to find balance between the two, find balance between order and chaos. So in other words, like impose a little order on the chaos, but not enough to that you take the enjoyment out of life. Yeah, because it has to be fucking enjoyable. You know what I mean? When there's no stress, and all you do is just enjoy it all. And I am very much enjoying it. I'm doing a bit of gardening. I'm doing a bit of cooking. Maybe we'll start a bit of yoga. But it's all very good. Right, I may go. Good morning.